an Apache girl without clothes, sold in the market, until a rancher decided to intervene. The sun had barely risen over the dusty hills when the young Apache girl opened her eyes. The air was crisp and carried the faint scent of sagebrush that grew wild around her small village. Her home was modest, a cluster of simple huts made from wood and clay, but to her, it was all she had ever known. Each morning began with chores, carrying water from the stream, tending to small patches of corn and beans, and helping her younger siblings prepare for the day. Life was not easy, but it had a rhythm that she understood, a rhythm that made even the hard days feel bearable. Her family's situation had always been difficult. The father, once a strong and proud man who had worked tirelessly to hunt and provide for his family, had grown weaker after years of illness and misfortune. Food was often scarce, and the winter months were the hardest, when the land offered little and the wind seemed to pierce through every corner of their small huts. Her mother, though kind and strong, struggled to make ends meet, sewing and trading small handmade items with neighbors, hoping to secure enough food for the children. The girl knew her parents loved her deeply, but she also saw the worry in their eyes and the quiet fear that something worse might happen if they could not survive. From a young age, the girl had learned to understand the signs of hunger, the shifts in her parents' moods, and the quiet ways in which hardship showed itself. She had learned to be patient when meals were small, and resilient when tasks seemed too difficult for her small hands. Her mind was sharp, and she often thought of ways to help her family, dreaming of finding opportunities that could make life easier, though she never imagined the danger that would come from those dreams. One morning, as the village stirred with activity, whispers began to spread about traders coming to the market nearby. The girl's parents spoke quietly about it in the corner of their hut, worried and anxious. They knew the market brought goods, food, and sometimes small opportunities for work, but it also brought strangers whose intentions were not always kind. They told her to stay close to the younger children and never wander far, to watch and listen, and to follow their instructions carefully. Despite her parents' warnings, curiosity tugged at the girl's heart. The idea of the market was exciting, a place full of new sounds, smells, and colors. She imagined stalls filled with shiny tools, colorful fabrics, and delicious food she rarely tasted. But alongside that excitement, there was also fear, a small voice inside her reminding her to be cautious. She did not know yet how quickly curiosity and danger could collide, and how life could change in the blink of an eye. As the morning grew warmer, the girl helped her mother with chores, carrying baskets of corn to dry under the sun. She noticed strangers passing through the village, their eyes scanning quickly, almost as if searching for something or someone. She felt a strange unease but could not name it. Her mother spoke in hushed tones about needing to be careful, about not trusting those who did not belong to their community. The girl nodded, pretending to understand fully, though her young mind wrestled with both fear and intrigue. Later, when the village was bustling with activity, a group of men arrived near the outskirts of the huts. They were not traders in the usual sense. There was a coldness in their manner, a sharpness in their eyes that set the girl's heart racing. They moved quickly, speaking in low voices, and she noticed her parents becoming tense, their movements cautious. She clung to her younger siblings, sensing the anxiety in her family, though she did not yet realize the danger approaching. Suddenly, without warning, the girl was separated from her family. The men approached her, speaking in voices she did not understand, urging her to come with them. Fear surged through her and her small legs trembled. She tried to pull away, but their hands were firm. Her mind raced, thinking of her parents, her siblings, and the only home she had ever known. She cried out, her voice echoing across the village, but the crowd was busy, and few noticed her struggle. In those moments, she felt both helpless and terrified, trapped in a world that suddenly seemed much larger and more frightening than she had ever imagined. The girl's parents ran after her, shouting, their voices desperate and raw. They tried to push through the crowd to reach her before it was too late, but the men were determined, and the girl was pulled further away from safety. Her mother fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face, praying for her child's protection. Her father's hands were clenched in frustration and fear, powerless in the face of the strangers who had taken their daughter. In those moments, the girl realized that the world could be cruel, that innocence did not always protect you, and that courage would be needed in ways she had never imagined. The journey from her village to the market was long, and every step was filled with uncertainty. The girl's thoughts swirled, memories of her family, the safety of home, and the strange, unknown path ahead. She watched the landscape change, hills giving way to dusty roads lined with traders and animals. The market was approaching, and with it, a world she had never seen, full of sights and sounds that made her both curious and anxious. Her heart pounded as she wondered what awaited her there, unsure if she would ever see her family again. Even in her fear, the girl noticed small details. The way birds darted across the sky, the way the wind carried scents of unfamiliar foods, and the colors of fabrics hanging from distant stalls. Her mind clung to these observations as a way to hold onto sanity, to keep her spirit alive despite the terror she felt. Each moment was a battle between hope and fear, between the longing for freedom and the reality of her situation. As the market came into view, the girl's anxiety deepened. People moved in every direction, shouting, bargaining, and gesturing. The crowd was overwhelming, and she felt small and invisible among so many strangers. The men who had brought her here spoke quietly, but their presence loomed large, and she understood instinctively that her fate was no longer in her own hands. Fear tried to overwhelm her, but she took a deep breath and remembered her family, imagining the love and courage that had always surrounded her. That thought gave her a small spark of strength, a reminder that she was more than her fear. And so, as the market stretched before her, bustling with life and shadowed by danger, the young Apache girl took her first steps into a world that would test her in ways she could not yet understand. She did not know it yet, but her life was about to change forever. She would encounter both cruelty and kindness, despair and hope, and she would need courage she had never known she possessed. In that moment, clinging to the memory of her family and the hope of rescue, she began the journey that would eventually lead her to safety and a chance to reclaim her life. The morning sun shone brightly overhead, casting light on the crowded market and the girl's uncertain path. Each step she took was heavy with fear, yet carried with it a quiet resilience, a determination to survive and to find a way back to the warmth and safety of her home. Though she was small and alone, the spark of courage inside her would not be extinguished. It flickered, waiting for the right moment, waiting for the chance for someone to intervene, and for the story of her survival to begin. The market was alive with noise and motion, a whirlwind of color, sound, and activity that made the young Apache girl's heart pound faster. Stalls lined every street, stacked high with vegetables, fruits, handmade crafts, and shining trinkets. People shouted their wares, bargaining loudly with customers, their voices blending into a chaotic symphony that made the girl feel even smaller and more alone. Her hands were clasped tightly together, and her small feet carried her uncertainly through the crowd, always aware of the men who had brought her here. They walked slightly behind her, keeping a close watch, their presence a constant reminder of the danger she faced. Her eyes wandered from stall to stall, noticing the bright fabrics that fluttered in the morning breeze. She imagined the softness of the cloth against her skin, the warmth it could bring if she ever had a place to wrap herself. Fruits glimmered under the sun, their colors vivid and enticing, and the scent of freshly baked bread mixed with herbs and spices, making her stomach ache with hunger. She longed to reach out, to taste, to feel, but the fear of the men watching her prevented any movement beyond trembling steps forward. She could see other children in the market, some laughing with their families, others working at stalls or carrying small baskets of goods. They seemed so free, so safe, and it made her heart ache with longing. She remembered her own siblings, wondering if they missed her, if they were safe back in the village. Tears threatened to spill over, but she quickly wiped them away, not wanting to give the men any satisfaction. Deep down, she knew she had to stay strong, even if her heart was heavy with fear. As she moved further into the heart of the market, she realized how confusing and overwhelming it was. Merchants shouted louder to get attention, their voices rising over the clamor of the crowd. Animals were tied to posts or being led through the streets, their hooves clattering on the dusty ground. The air was thick with smells: fresh bread, cooking meats, earthy vegetables, and the sharp scent of smoke from small fires used by vendors to cook their meals. Every sense of hers was alive, alert, and tense, trying to take in a world that seemed both fascinating and terrifying. Amidst this chaos, a man on horseback rode slowly through the market, his presence commanding attention without him needing to shout. He was tall and broad-shouldered, wearing simple but clean clothing, with a hat that shaded his eyes from the sun. This was the rancher, a man who had grown up nearby and had seen the struggles of many families in the region. He had heard stories of children being sold, of families forced into desperation, and his heart ached at the thought that someone could be treated as less than human. As the rancher guided his horse through the busy streets, his eyes scanned carefully, looking beyond the bright colors and noise. Something caught his attention: a small girl, looking frightened and out of place, her hands clasped tightly together, her eyes wide with fear. He felt a sharp pang in his chest, recognizing immediately that she did not belong here, that she was in danger. Without hesitation, he urged his horse closer, keeping a careful distance so as not to alert the men walking behind her. The girl felt his gaze even before she noticed him. There was something different about the way he looked at her, a kindness that seemed to shine through even amidst the confusion of the market. For a brief moment, she felt a flicker of hope, a small spark that maybe, just maybe, someone could help her. But the men behind her were quick to notice her slowing pace, and one of them called out sharply, grabbing her arm. Fear surged and she struggled, trying to pull away, but their grip was firm. The rancher's heart pounded as he saw the struggle. He knew he had to act carefully, but he also knew he could not ignore what he saw. He rode his horse closer and called out in a firm but calm voice, "Let her go. She is not for sale." The words carried over the noise of the market, drawing attention from nearby merchants and passers-by. Some people turned to watch, curious about the interruption, while others continued their business, indifferent to the drama unfolding. The men who had brought the girl were startled, unsure how to respond to this unexpected intervention. One of them stepped forward, his expression hard, trying to assert control over the situation. "She is ours," he said quickly, his voice sharp. "Mind your own business." But the rancher's eyes were steady, his voice unwavering. "No child should be treated this way. You will release her, or I will get the authorities involved." The tension in the market grew. People began to gather around, sensing that something serious was happening. Whispers spread, and some onlookers approached cautiously, curious about the confrontation. The girl felt a mix of fear and hope as she watched the rancher stand firmly between her and the men. She clung tightly to a small piece of cloth in her hands, a remnant of home, finding comfort in its familiar texture. Seeing the situation escalate, one of the men tried to pull the girl away forcefully, but the rancher acted quickly, placing his horse between them to block any further movement. "Stop," he commanded. "This child is under my protection until help arrives." His voice carried authority, and the men hesitated, realizing that the crowd and the attention could turn against them if they persisted. Nearby merchants and townspeople began to gather, their expressions a mix of concern and curiosity. Some whispered about what was happening, others quietly moved to observe from a safe distance. The girl's fear slowly began to mingle with hope, as she realized that someone was truly standing up for her, someone willing to risk confrontation to ensure her safety. The rancher's presence was steadying, and she felt a small sense of relief that perhaps this nightmare might have a chance to end. While waiting for official help, the rancher spoke gently to the girl, kneeling to her level and offering a reassuring smile. "It's okay," he said softly. "You're safe now. I will make sure nothing bad happens to you." His words, though simple, carried immense comfort. For the first time since leaving her village, the girl felt a glimmer of safety, a sense that someone truly cared about her well-being. The minutes stretched on, tense and uncertain, until local authorities, alerted by the commotion, arrived at the market. The rancher explained the situation, recounting what he had witnessed and why the girl needed protection. The authorities listened carefully, questioning the men and verifying the girl's story. Slowly but surely, the reality of the situation became clear. The girl had been brought to the market against her will, and her presence here was a result of desperate circumstances that had crossed the line into harm. With the authorities now involved, the men were forced to release the girl. She clung to the rancher instinctively, finding comfort in his strength and calm presence. The crowd watched silently, some shaking their heads in disapproval at what had nearly occurred, others murmuring admiration for the man who had intervened. The girl felt a rush of gratitude, mixed with lingering fear, as she realized that she had survived the immediate danger. The rancher led her away from the busy market, guiding her through quieter streets where the noise was softer, and the chaos of the market began to fade. With each step, she felt the tension in her body loosen slightly, though the memories of the men and the fear of being separated from her family remained close. The rancher spoke calmly, explaining that she would be taken to a safe place where she could rest, eat, and recover from the ordeal. Along the way, the girl began to ask questions, her voice small but filled with curiosity. "Who are you?" she asked. "Why did you help me?" The rancher smiled gently, patting her shoulder. "Because it's the right thing to do," he said simply. "No one should be treated like that. You deserve to be safe, and I will make sure you are." His words were reassuring, and for the first time in many hours, the girl felt a true sense of hope. As they moved further from the market, the girl began to notice the world differently. The sun seemed warmer, the air fresher, and even the distant hills looked inviting rather than threatening. Her senses, once alert with fear, began to relax slightly, and she realized that there was a possibility of safety, kindness, and care beyond the chaos she had just escaped. The rancher's calm presence was like a shield, protecting her from the uncertainty and danger that had surrounded her. By the time they reached a quiet place where the authorities could take her to a secure location, the girl's mind was a mixture of exhaustion and relief. She had survived an ordeal that could have been far worse, and though fear still lingered, so did a spark of trust. She realized that not everyone in the world wished her harm, and that there were people willing to fight for those who could not defend themselves. That day at the market became a turning point in the girl's life. It was a moment when fear met courage, and when kindness intervened in the face of cruelty. Though the memory of the danger she faced would stay with her for years, it was now accompanied by the knowledge that she was not alone, that there were people who cared, and that her life could be protected and valued. The girl's journey was far from over, but for the first time since leaving her village, she felt that hope could exist even in the most unexpected places. And as she rested, safe for the first time in what felt like an eternity, she knew that the intervention of one determined man had changed the course of her life forever. After the young Apache girl was rescued from the market, she was taken to a small, quiet place where she could rest safely. It was a simple building, with clean walls and soft light streaming through the windows. The hustle and chaos of the market seemed far away now, replaced by calm and safety. She sat on a bench, her small hands folded in her lap, trying to steady her racing heart. Even though the immediate danger had passed, her mind replayed the events, and her body trembled from fear and exhaustion. The rancher stayed by her side, offering gentle reassurance. He had arranged everything with the authorities so she would be protected, but he refused to leave her alone, knowing that a child who had just faced such danger needed someone they could trust. "It's okay," he said softly. "You're safe now. No one can hurt you here." His voice was steady, calm, and full of kindness, and for the first time in what felt like forever, the girl believed him. She looked up at him with wide eyes, still unsure of how to process everything. "Will they take me back?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The rancher shook his head gently. "No, not until it's safe, and not without making sure your family is okay too. Right now, you don't have to worry. You're protected." His words brought a small measure of comfort, though the girl still felt the weight of what had happened pressing on her chest. The first hours in safety were quiet, almost painfully so. The girl was given a simple meal, which she ate slowly, her appetite tempered by nervousness and fatigue. She looked around the room, noticing the small comforts she had never known before: a soft blanket, a clean floor, and the gentle hum of voices in the distance. It was a strange new world, so different from the uncertainty and fear she had just experienced. And yet, she felt the beginnings of relief, a sense that perhaps, somehow, things could get better. The rancher spoke to her gently about the events of the day, not to frighten her again, but to help her understand that she had done nothing wrong. "You were brave," he said. "You stayed strong even when it was hard. That's not easy for anyone, especially a young girl." She listened quietly, letting his words sink in. For the first time, someone had acknowledged her courage, and it gave her a small, flickering sense of pride and strength. As the afternoon passed, the rancher began making arrangements for her longer-term safety. He spoke with the authorities, ensuring that the girl would be placed in a secure environment where she could rest, heal, and be protected from harm. He also asked about her family, expressing his desire to find them and make sure they were safe. Though the girl had been terrified of being separated from her family, she began to feel hope at the thought that she might see them again one day. The authorities arranged for a caretaker to watch over the girl while the rancher handled the legal matters. The caretaker was kind, speaking softly and moving with gentle patience. She offered the girl water, a clean blanket, and small comforts, which the girl accepted with tentative gratitude. It was a strange feeling, being cared for by someone she had just met, but the warmth and consistency helped her relax a little, making the world feel a little less frightening. Over the next few days, the girl began to settle into a new routine. She had space to rest during the day, nourishing meals to eat, and a quiet environment that allowed her to process what had happened. She spent time drawing pictures of her home and family, finding comfort in familiar memories. Each drawing was a bridge to her past, a way to hold on to the people she loved even while separated from them. The rancher visited often, checking on her progress and speaking words of encouragement. He also spoke to her about her feelings, asking gently about what had scared her, what had made her cry, and what she hoped for. The girl began to open up slowly, sharing small details about her life in the village, the chores she had done, the people she loved, and the struggles her family faced. Each story she told was met with patience and kindness, helping her understand that she was being heard and valued. It was a new experience for her, one that made her feel seen in a way she had never felt before. During this time, the rancher also worked with the authorities to investigate the circumstances that had led to her being sold at the market. He wanted to ensure that no other child would face the same danger, and he was determined to hold those responsible accountable. He spoke with merchants, neighbors, and local officials, piecing together the truth of the situation. The girl did not understand all the details, but she could sense that people were working hard to protect her and others like her. That knowledge gave her courage, a quiet reassurance that the world could sometimes be just, even if it had been cruel before. As the girl regained strength and a sense of security, she began to explore the safe space around her. There were small gardens, quiet rooms filled with books and toys, and areas where she could sit and watch the sunlight fall across the floor. Each small discovery brought a sense of wonder and relief, reminding her that life could also have moments of joy, safety, and beauty. She began to laugh softly at the simplest things: a bird landing nearby, a small flower blooming in the garden, the sound of her own footsteps echoing in a quiet hallway. These moments, though small, were monumental in her journey toward healing. The rancher also began to introduce the idea of education and learning. He explained that even though she had faced hardships, she could still learn new skills, read books, and discover new ideas. The girl was hesitant at first, unsure if she was ready, but curiosity slowly overcame doubt. She began to explore letters, numbers, and simple stories, finding comfort in the ability to focus on something other than fear. Each lesson was small, but it reminded her that life had more to offer than danger and uncertainty. One afternoon, the rancher took her for a walk outside. The world beyond the walls of safety seemed vast and full of possibilities. They walked along a quiet path, noticing birds, flowers, and the gentle movement of trees in the wind. The rancher spoke about courage and strength, explaining that even in difficult times, people could find ways to protect each other and to make life better. The girl listened intently, her small heart absorbing each word, learning that hope and bravery could exist even in a world that had shown her fear. As the days turned into weeks, the girl began to trust the rancher completely. She shared stories about her village, her family, and her dreams. She laughed more freely, slept more soundly, and began to look forward to each new day. The rancher's patience, care, and guidance had created a space where she could heal, and slowly, her spirit began to recover from the trauma she had endured. The girl also began to learn about empathy and kindness through her interactions with others at the safe place. She saw how people worked together, helped each other, and showed care for those in need. She realized that even though the world could be cruel, it could also be filled with people willing to fight for what was right. This understanding gave her strength, reinforcing the idea that she could survive, grow, and perhaps even help others one day. The rancher continued his efforts to protect her, speaking to authorities and community leaders about the importance of safety and justice. His actions ensured that her family would be contacted safely, and plans were made to reunite them in a secure and supportive way. The girl learned that there were people working tirelessly behind the scenes to make sure that her life could be rebuilt, piece by piece, with care and attention. Through all of this, the girl discovered her own resilience. She realized that fear and courage could coexist, and that even in moments of uncertainty she could find hope. Each small victory, a day without tears, a meal eaten peacefully, a story read aloud, was a step toward reclaiming her life. The world that had once seemed frightening began to feel like a place where she could belong, grow, and thrive. By the time the first month had passed, the girl had transformed from a frightened child into a young girl filled with cautious optimism. She understood that life would still have challenges, but she also knew that people like the rancher and the kind strangers who had helped her existed to make the world better. She had been given a second chance, and she was learning how to hold on to it, step by step. Every night, as she lay under a warm blanket, she thought of her family and the village she had left behind. Though she missed them deeply, she also felt a sense of gratitude for the care and protection she now had. She dreamed of a future where she could see her family again, safe and happy, and where she could help others who faced difficulties like hers. That hope became a light inside her, a guiding force that helped her continue even when memories of fear threatened to return. And so, in the quiet safety of her new home, the young Apache girl began to heal. She learned about trust, courage, and the power of kindness. She discovered that even in the darkest moments, hope could exist, and that one person's actions, like the rancher's, could change a life forever. Though the journey ahead was long, she had already taken the most important steps, surviving, trusting, and beginning to believe that life could once again be filled with safety, joy, and love. Time passed slowly, but steadily, and the young Apache girl began to feel a sense of normalcy returned to her life. The quiet days in her safe home were no longer just filled with fear and uncertainty. They now carried small joys, like the warmth of sunlight through the windows, the sound of birds singing outside, and the gentle voices of people who cared for her well-being. Each day she learned a little more about trust, about patience, and about hope. The rancher continued to visit her regularly. His presence had become a comforting routine, a reminder that there was a world beyond fear and danger. He encouraged her to explore her talents, to learn new skills, and to think about her future. At first, she was hesitant. After all she had endured, the idea of learning or dreaming seemed distant and almost impossible. But the rancher's quiet persistence, combined with her own curiosity, slowly opened a door in her heart. She began with small steps. In the mornings, she would practice reading simple stories, tracing letters carefully with a pencil, learning how each one formed words and sentences. It was not always easy. Her hand trembled sometimes, and her mind wandered, but each word she read felt like a small victory. With every story, she began to see that the world could hold more than fear. It could hold knowledge, imagination, and the power to understand. Afternoons were for learning practical skills. She was shown how to sew, how to care for small plants in the garden, and how to help in small ways around the safe home. These tasks seemed ordinary at first, but they brought her a sense of purpose. She realized that even small actions could have meaning, and that by contributing to her surroundings, she could feel useful and capable. Slowly, her confidence began to grow, and with it, a sense of self-worth that she had not felt since before the market. The rancher also encouraged her to express herself through drawing and storytelling. She began to sketch pictures of her village, of her family, and of the landscape she remembered from home. She drew the hills, the small huts, and even the fields where she had helped her family plant corn. Each picture was a bridge to the past, a way to hold on to memories while also exploring the hope of the future. Through these drawings, she found a voice for her feelings, a safe way to share the experiences she could not yet speak aloud. One day, the rancher brought her to a small library in the nearby town. The building was quiet and filled with books of all kinds, from stories of adventure to histories of faraway places. The girl's eyes widened as she stepped inside. It was as if a new world had opened before her. The smell of old pages and the soft rustle of turning sheets filled her with awe. She realized that knowledge was not just about survival. It could also be a way to explore the world, to dream, and to imagine possibilities beyond her immediate experience. In the library, she met a kind librarian who patiently helped her choose books suitable for her age and reading level. They read together, and the girl began to develop a love for stories that transported her to other places, allowed her to meet new characters, and offered lessons about courage, kindness, and resilience. Each story was a step toward healing, teaching her that even in difficult circumstances, it was possible to find hope, make choices, and shape one's own path. Meanwhile, the rancher continued his work outside of her immediate care. He spoke with authorities, community leaders, and even distant relatives of the girl, ensuring that her family's safety was secured and that a plan was in place for their eventual reunion. He wanted her to know that while she was learning and healing, Those who loved her were being protected and supported. When he shared this information, the girl felt a mixture of excitement and anxiety. She longed to see her family again, yet she was also aware that much had changed, and the reunion would be emotional and overwhelming. The girl's routine became a balance of learning, exploring, and connecting with those around her. She began to make friends with other children who visited the safe home, sharing simple games, stories, and laughter. These friendships, though small, gave her a sense of belonging she had not felt in a long time. She realized that people could be kind, caring, and trustworthy, and that she could form connections that would help her navigate a world that had once seemed so dangerous. One afternoon, as she worked in the garden, planting seeds alongside the rancher, she asked him a question that had been on her mind for weeks. "Will I ever see my family again?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. The rancher smiled gently, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Yes," he said, "we are working to make sure it happens. Soon you will see them and it will be safe and happy. You have grown stronger and they will see that too." The girl felt a rush of relief, a lightness in her chest that had been absent for so long. The hope of reunion motivated her, giving her energy and purpose. Days turned into weeks and the girl continued to thrive. She learned to care for herself in small ways, dressing neatly, washing her hands, and tending to her personal belongings. These simple routines brought a sense of independence and pride. She realized that though she had once been powerless in the market, she now had skills, knowledge, and support that gave her strength. Each day was a step toward reclaiming her life and shaping her own future. The rancher also taught her about kindness and helping others. He shared stories of people who had faced difficulties but had found ways to help those in need. Inspired, the girl began small acts of kindness herself, assisting younger children, helping in the garden, and sharing her drawings and stories. These acts gave her confidence and joy, showing her that even small contributions could make a difference in the lives of others. As the day of the planned reunion with her family approached, the girl felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. She practiced holding her head high, imagining the smiles of her parents and siblings, and thinking about the stories she would share. The rancher reassured her, explaining that it was normal to feel anxious and that her family would be proud of how brave and resilient she had become. His words strengthened her, helping her feel ready for the emotional moment that lay ahead. Finally, the day arrived. The rancher accompanied her to a quiet meeting place where her family waited. The girl's heart raced as she saw familiar faces, worn but full of love. Her parents ran toward her, embracing her tightly, and her siblings clung to her arms. Tears flowed freely, not from fear this time, but from relief, joy, and the overwhelming power of reunion. The rancher watched quietly, smiling as he saw the happiness and love that filled the air, knowing that his actions had helped restore a family and bring hope to a young girl's life. In the days that followed, the girl spent time reconnecting with her family. She shared stories of her time in the safe home, her learning, and the friends she had made. Her parents listened with pride and gratitude, recognizing the strength and courage their daughter had shown. Together, they began to rebuild their lives, creating routines that balanced work, education, and family connection. Though the journey ahead would still have challenges, they faced it together, stronger and more united than ever before. The young Apache girl had come a long way from the fear and uncertainty of the market. She had learned courage, resilience, and the power of kindness. She had discovered that even in the darkest moments, there could be hope, and that people willing to stand up for what was right could change lives forever. Her journey was a story of survival, growth, and the enduring strength of the human spirit. Through the guidance of the rancher, the support of authorities, and the love of her family, the girl had transformed from a frightened child into a young girl with hope, confidence, and dreams for the future. She understood that life could be challenging, But she also knew that kindness, courage, and determination could make the impossible possible. Each day she continued to grow, learning that the world could hold safety, love, and opportunities, and that her own strength and resilience would guide her forward. The days after the reunion with her family were filled with warmth, laughter, and a new sense of hope for the young Apache girl. She felt as though the world had opened up to her, showing colors and possibilities she had never imagined. Life was no longer just about survival. It was about growing, learning, and finding joy in each moment. Her parents, though still cautious from the hardships they had faced, were proud to see how brave and resilient she had become. The rancher continued to visit her and her family, not because she needed constant supervision, but because he cared deeply about the progress she was making. He shared stories, offered advice, and encouraged her to keep learning. Together, they would walk along the hills near her village, noticing the wildflowers, the flowing streams, and the distant mountains. These walks became lessons in observation, patience, and reflection. The girl began to appreciate the beauty of the world around her, realizing that life could be peaceful and meaningful even after experiencing fear and uncertainty. With the support of the rancher and her family, the girl returned to her studies with newfound determination. She loved to read, and each story she completed gave her a sense of accomplishment. She discovered that learning was not just about words on a page. It was about understanding the world, thinking for herself, and dreaming of possibilities beyond what she had ever known. Her curiosity blossomed, and she began asking questions about the land, the animals, and the people around her. Her family answered patiently, proud of her eagerness to learn. She also began to teach her younger siblings some of the lessons she had learned while in safety. They would sit together in the evenings, drawing pictures, counting numbers, and reading simple stories. The girl felt a deep sense of responsibility, knowing that she could help them grow and that her experience could guide them in small ways. Each night she would reflect on how far she had come, from fear and confusion in the market to a place of knowledge, safety, and love. The rancher also helped the family in practical ways. He guided them on how to improve their farm, how to care for livestock, and how to make small repairs to their home. Slowly, the family's life became more secure. They had food to eat, a safe place to sleep, and the knowledge that the girl's future was no longer threatened. For the first time in many years, her parents could breathe without constant fear, knowing that their daughter was safe and thriving. The girl found joy in the small things that had once been overlooked. She would chase butterflies through the fields, help gather fresh vegetables from the garden, and watch the sunset with her family. These simple moments, filled with peace and love, helped heal the remaining fears and anxieties that lingered from her experience in the market. She began to sleep better at night, dreaming of a future filled with hope, family, and purpose. One day, the rancher spoke to her about the idea of helping others. "You have experienced something very hard," he said gently, "but now you have the strength to make a difference. There are other children who need protection, guidance, and hope. You can be a part of that." At first, she was unsure. She was still young, and the idea of helping others seemed overwhelming. But over time, she began to see the power in sharing her story and supporting others who faced difficulties. She realized that her experiences, though painful, could be used to bring light to others. The girl also began to reconnect with her wider community. People in the village had heard about her ordeal and her safe return, and they welcomed her and her family with kindness and respect. Neighbors offered support, shared resources, and provided friendship. The girl felt a deep sense of belonging, knowing that she was not alone and that she could trust the people around her. These connections strengthened her resilience and gave her confidence that life could be secure, joyful, and full of meaning. As she grew older, the girl continued to thrive. She developed skills in reading, writing, and practical tasks that allowed her to contribute meaningfully to her family and community. She learned about the land, the animals, and the traditions of her people, embracing her heritage while also understanding the wider world. Her confidence and determination inspired those around her, and she became a symbol of courage and resilience in her village. The rancher remained a steady presence in her life, not as a protector in the way he had been at first, but as a mentor and friend. He encouraged her to dream, to set goals, and to believe in herself. With his guidance, she began to imagine a future where she could use her experiences to help others. She thought about children who might be in danger, families struggling with hardship, and communities that needed support. The idea that she could make a difference gave her purpose and fueled her determination. Her parents watched with pride as she grew into a confident, compassionate young woman. They remembered the day she had been taken to the market, the fear and helplessness they had felt, and the long road of healing that followed. They were grateful to the rancher, to the authorities, and to everyone who had helped ensure her safety. But above all, they were proud of their daughter, whose courage, resilience, and kindness had transformed not only her own life, but also the lives of those around her. The young Apache girl also learned the value of forgiveness and understanding. She knew that the people who had endangered her had acted out of desperation or cruelty, but she chose not to let anger consume her. Instead, she focused on building a positive future, helping others, and embracing the love and support she had received. This choice brought her peace, allowing her to move forward without being weighed down by bitterness or fear. Over time, the girl became a role model in her community. People admired her strength, her willingness to help others, and her commitment to learning and growth. She inspired other children and families to face challenges with courage and resilience. Her story became a source of hope, a reminder that even in the darkest times, kindness, courage, and intervention could change lives forever. She also developed a deep sense of gratitude. She appreciated the rancher who had risked himself to help her, the authorities who ensured her protection, and her family who had welcomed her back with open arms. Gratitude became a guiding principle in her life, shaping how she treated others and how she approached challenges. She learned that recognizing the good in people and circumstances could bring strength, even in difficult times. Years later, the young Apache girl, now grown into a capable and confident young woman, looked back on her journey with a sense of pride and humility. She remembered the fear and uncertainty of the market, the kindness of the rancher, the support of the authorities, and the love of her family. Each step of her journey had shaped her, teaching her lessons of courage, resilience, compassion, and hope. She understood that her life was not only about survival, but about thriving, learning, and helping others along the way. She dedicated herself to supporting children and families in need. She shared her story in safe and meaningful ways, helping others understand the importance of protection, kindness, and standing up for what is right. Her experiences became a guiding light, showing that even in the face of adversity, hope could flourish and positive change was always possible. The girl's life became a testament to the power of intervention, love, and perseverance. She had faced danger, fear, and uncertainty, yet she had emerged stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. Her story inspired those around her to act with courage and kindness, reminding everyone that one person's actions could make a difference. Through all the challenges she had faced, the young Apache girl learned that life could be beautiful, meaningful, and full of hope. She realized that danger and fear might appear, but with courage, guidance, and support, it was possible to overcome even the most difficult obstacles. Her journey from the market to safety, healing, education, and purpose was complete, yet it also marked the beginning of a life dedicated to making the world a better place. In the quiet moments, she would often think of the rancher, her family, and everyone who had helped her. She felt a deep sense of gratitude and responsibility, knowing that her survival and growth were not only gifts, but also opportunities to give back. Each day, She lived with intention, helping others, nurturing her family, and embracing the beauty and potential of life. And so, the young Apache girl who had once faced fear and uncertainty became a symbol of hope, courage, and resilience. She showed that even in the darkest times, kindness, intervention, and love could change a life forever. Her story was not just about survival. It was about growth, healing, and the enduring power of the human spirit to rise above challenges, embrace hope, and create a brighter future for herself and others.